Greetings, my name is Tommy the Keyblade Master, and welcome to my channel. This is another audio response to one of Alloy7's Gamer Life videos, and it's really about what's been going around YouTube the last few days. Basically, some game for the PS4, I think it was called Order 1886 or something like that, released, and it was only a couple of hours long. And now a whole bunch of people have their tidies in a bind, and a lot of people are taking the stance that games need to be long in order to be good. And my thoughts on that are a little bit mixed. Now, if the whole idea that longer games equal better games and more sales, then the Japanese RPG would not be a niche audience. It would be the highest seller. Instead, what we usually have as high sellers in America, at least, are the first-person shooters. And why is that? Well, the lastivity of the single-player campaign on those games are only 2 or 3 hours. However, if you want to commit yourself to a lot of online competition with those games, they can last hundreds of hours. Doing basically just online competition, there's usually some leveling system in the modern games to equip your soldier with new stuff as you play the game. But for the most part, it's online competition that really increases the game. So you gotta look at that part too. I don't know if this game had any online parts. However, to me, it's not really about length. It's just how long can a game stay fun, and that is the important part. I go back to my review of the original Assassin's Creed. That game bored me to tears. I was ready to be done with it by about mission 4 or 5 out of 9. Assassin's Creed 2, on the other hand, which is a game I love, lasts twice as long as the original Assassin's Creed, but manages to keep itself fun, at least for me, all the way through that game. So I enjoyed that experience more and wanted to keep playing. And then I also have to bring in old game aspects as well, because that's also important to look at. And you don't see a lot of modern games really incorporating some of these old school aspects to it. In fact, I think a lot of times, unless they were an indie download that would cost you $10, I think most people would be extremely shafted if we went old school with a lot of these games. And by that I mean most of the old school NES and Super Nintendo games only lasted an hour or 2 tops. You look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, that can be beaten in less than a half an hour. But I play through Turtles in Time constantly. It's one of my favorite brawlers, so I at least have that in my console 2 or 3 times a year playing it, even though I've owned that game probably close to 20 years. That said, most of those classic games got their length by kicking the living crap out of you. Game overs were common in those games. Nowadays, of course, games take it easier on people, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when I see old-timers like myself complain about how easy games are these days. I really have to ask them, would you really want to play a game as tough as Ninja Gaiden was on its last stage for 30 hours? 'Cause I wouldn't. So that's one of the things that have changed, and because games no longer have that back to the beginning edge, I can understand why people feel a little cheated if it finishes early. And very few of these newer games do I find myself wanting to go back to after I'm done with them, especially right away. Anymore, I do a review of them somehow. Either I type it up for a website or I do a YouTube review, and then I move on to my next game. Very few games have had me stop and go, I want to try it on a different difficulty or replay a stage or 2 again just because I find it fun. And a good example of a game that's done that recently, and it's kind of short, we're talking about the same length that people are complaining about this Order game for the PS4, and that is Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters only took me about 4 or 5 hours to beat. However, I enjoyed that experience. It did the 1980s films justice. It was a good shooter in its own right, so I immediately plugged it back into my system and tried hard mode. But most games, I don't. And I think some things have to do with the length. I don't have time really to go back and play a 30-hour game again. I want to move on to another experience after 30 hours, and that's something that is missing. You don't see too many speed runs of modern games. Most of the speed runs go for Super Mario Brothers, because it is possible to speedrun that sucker in 5 minutes fast, especially if you know a few cheats. So, like I said, it's not just the first time through, and it is important you can only play a game the first time through, but what is your experience like? Do you want to play it again? Also has to be brought in. I don't know if I would want to play this order game again. And as much as people like to harp that games have to be long nowadays, they're forgetting that by doing that, you might actually kill some of these old franchises. Me, I would love to see a return of the Mega Man series. However, Mega Man only lasts 4 or 5 hours. After that, you're done with it. Although, some of the better Mega Man games are always fun to replay through again, they're only 4 or 5 hours, so if you're telling developers that they can't make games that are less than that, well, kiss goodbye to a lot of franchises because they won't be able to meet that mark, and that is unfortunate. And there are other things that need to be mentioned too that make a game good. Right now I'm reviewing 2 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games. They are considered short by definition by a lot of people. They're only 4 or 5 hours long to get through the first time. However, I would say both of them are far too long. One of them's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadow, and this one tries to make itself complex and throw in RPG elements that it uses poorly. And it tries to make you go back and grind through some extremely long stages. We're talking like half an hour long stages or more to just level up a little bit, and oftentimes you find out that going back to the stage that you're trying to get past, you still have to go back through the first stage again to grind even more. I've had it with that game and I'm reviewing it now. It's crap, and you can just tell that by looking at the graphics too. The other game I'm going to be reviewing soon is just called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it's the first licensed game from the Nickelodeon show. And that one has almost the opposite problem. While the Out of the Shadows tries to make me grind, this one has absolutely no depth to it whatsoever. Yes, there is also a leveling system, but it doesn't matter because the game is so easy and so simple-minded that it just lacks any type of charm, and it's boring. It's kind of hard to put a finger on what's wrong with this game, because unlike Out of the Shadow, which you can just show that it's so badly broken that it's kind of funny, this one at least follows all the rules and at least had some quality control behind it. But both games lasted too long because they're just not fun, and that needs to be addressed. Is this order game fun all the way through? Is it disappointing because you feel like the game was just revving up and then it ends? That can be a problem too, and that's something I would like to know. I can't buy this game because I went with the Xbox One, and that's the console I'm sticking with right now. I might get a PS4 at a later date, but the type of games I usually play on my PlayStation won't be released probably until later in its lifespan. So I'm going to be sticking with my Xbox One for now. Anyways, this is kind of a good debate, but reality is it just depends on the gamer and the type of game and the experience. Some games need those lengths. Some games are good because they're short. The question is, do you feel like you've been fulfilled by them, you've enjoyed the experience, and would you ever want to experience it again, regardless of the length? If the answer is yes, especially to the I would love to replay it again, then the game is fine. So leave it alone. Don't yell because the game is too short. Complain because the game wasn't satisfying. Anyways, I welcome your thoughts below in the comments section. Tommy the Keyblade Master signing out.